Hey everybody, Doug here, one of the hosts and creators of the Genre of Your Life podcast. I'm bringing you a bonus episode this week. No regular episode of the Genre of Your Life this week, unfortunately. We had a bit of a scheduling conflict with the work schedule between myself and Nick and Joel, so no worries. We'll be back next week as normal with another episode of the show. But in the meantime, I wanted to bring everyone a bonus episode that will kind of hold you over in the meantime. But as always, if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, your podcast platform of choice, hit that follow button. Leave a review and rating. It helps the show out tremendously. And as always, we thank you so much for your support. So with this week's bonus episode, got a few things coming out this week in movies and TV. But I wanted to share two things that I watched recently, reviews, one movie, one show that I want to talk about with you all. The first movie I'm going to talk about on today's show is the new movie RENFIELD, starring Nicolas Cage as Dracula, Nicholas Hoult, directed by Chris McKay, who directed, I believe, the Lego Batman movie and directed 2021's The Tomorrow War, which is on Prime Video. And you know what? I've been actually admired by this guy a little bit just because of, I love seeing people who worked in stunts and visual effects and editing kind of become filmmakers. I think it's pretty cool that they learned so much on the things they've done before they were filmmakers, and now seeing them take the director's chair or producer's chair is very kind of inspiring to me, but also just I love seeing kind of people branch out what they're normal doing, whether it's an actor doing mostly comedies now does dramatic work, or a comedic actor now directing horror movies like Jordan Peele or John Krasinski or Zach Cregger who did Barbarian. So I always like seeing people kind of break the status quo when it comes to doing new things in the industry. And this guy, I wasn't the biggest Lego Batman fan. I think it was kind of like a step down from the original Lego movie, but I know there's a huge fan base for it. I actually really enjoyed 2021's The Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt. I think it's a very underrated sci-fi movie. It has its flaws here and there, but I thought it was very enjoyable. I think the visual effects were top notch. So it's on Amazon Prime now. I recommend that movie if you have time on your hands. So watch this movie. But yeah, I was looking forward to seeing this movie RENFIELD. I was supposed to go to a screening of it last week, but something going on with work and other events going on, so I missed it. But I saw it this weekend, and again, I'm a huge Nicolas Cage fan. I love seeing him back in kind of like mainstream, big budget movies because he's been doing a lot of like VOD, straight to VOD movies or very, very low budget independent films. So I enjoy seeing him back on the big screen. And I think last year what he did with Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent was such a fun movie. He's poking fun of himself as an actor, but you can see he's having fun returning back to the big screen, doing these kind of like mid to big budget movies. And I think it was refreshing seeing him back on a big comedy like that he did last year. Again, he's playing himself, and it works. It's super funny, it's super meta, but it works all in the right way. So with this going in, I like the concept. I like the premise. I like who's involved. For a quick little recap, the Renfield basically has been Dracula's assistant for the past almost 100 years. He's been kind of like his right hand man when he needs people to eat. Renfield gets people to Dracula, and with a lot of errands, finding a new lair, finding a new like relocation when things get found out between the two of them. So it's a action comedy horror that was pitched in the trailers, and again, big Nicholas Hoult fan who plays Renfield's assistant, and again, huge Nicolas Cage fan who's playing Dracula. So I was very hyped going into this movie, and you know what? It delivers on a lot of stuff. However, there are things that it kind of hurts itself in the making. So, but starting off with the good, I do feel like the acting here is very, very solid. Nicholas Hoult definitely carries this movie. Nicolas Cage is definitely present in scenes, but this is Nicholas Holt's kind of movie. He's shining in this. He's the title character. Dracula kind of almost plays like a background character to this movie, where yes, he's the main one of the main parts of the movie. However, Nicholas Hoult has to really shine and carry and do everything for his master, which is Dracula. So you're seeing a lot of Nicholas Hoult kind of doing a lot of self-discovery, learning about codependency, learning about toxic relationships in the workplace, which is kind of funny, with this kind of support group he's part of, kind of figuring out like who he wants to be as a person, why is he doing this, why is he still doing this after so many years. He never ages, like Dracula, never ages, and so it's like he's been doing this for so long. What's the point of him staying around this long enough? And I thought it was very fascinating how they're kind of exploring like his like mental side of who he is, and he wants to be good, even though he's doing some really outrageous and evil things to get people to so his boss can eat. And I thought it was very funny seeing like him in support group, again, the whole self discovery thing, which is kind of like meta in its own way. And I think that worked very, very well. And like I said, Nicholas Hoult really carries this movie as an actor. I think he's a really phenomenal actor. And like I said, Nicolas Cage, you can tell he's having a lot of fun with this movie. And even though he's not the big part of the movie, he still shines in the scenes that he's in. And he's a great Dracula. I think he's very menacing, but at the same time, there's a lot of charm to him at the same time, which I think is, and kudos to Nicolas Cage as an actor, that he can balance this craziness, darkness, but also has that same kind of charm no matter who he's playing, whether it's Castor Troy uh, Face Off, or I forget the name, guys, his character's name in National Treasure. He has this charm to him no matter what. I think is very impressive as an actor. And there's a lot of supporting characters. Again, Ben Schwartz is in it, who John Ralphio from Parks and Rec, and he's the voice of Sonic from the Sonic movies. And I'm a huge fan of his. I met him actually once in LA at a premiere years ago, and he was super super friendly. So again, a huge fan of his. And during his scenes, he for sure has moments to shine. He brings a lot of comedy to the story, to his character arc, his background. But again, he's not really like in it much. But when he's in it, he definitely he brings this kind of like bring these comedic chops to the movie, to his role. And again, I love seeing him on screen. Awkwafina's good. I see a lot of stuff. She's one of those actresses I feel like in a lot of movies kind of plays the same thing. And I do like seeing actors kind of like change up their typical role, or typical kind of like character approach. Again, I think she's a great actress, but I do feel like she's kind of doing the same thing as she always does, whether it's in Shang-Chi or I think she was good in Nora from Queens. I think it was a bit different, but other things she's been in. But I don't think I wish they gave her more to do. I think she's kind of just there, just feel like, hey, she's here. She's a big name now. She's a big comedian. They'll just put her in there. And I think is that the way her character arc storyline is very generic. It's a very generic kind of revenge story, through the subplot of the movie, and it just kind of took away from her, who she was as a character, what her purpose is to Renfield, what the purpose is to the story overall. So it's distracting at times. Also, I do feel like her and Nicholas Hoult don't have any chemistry, and on screen you can tell that, like, yeah, they're there and they're acting, they're doing pretty well as actors, but there's no chemistry between the two of them. And Nicholas Hoult is also like 3 feet taller. Not that it doesn't matter, but it just there's no kind of spark, and there's supposed to become some kind of romantic love interest, and it's not really fully explored, and it's very kind of forgotten maybe halfway during the movie. So when you see it, you'll see that there's really no kind of interest between the two of them. I mean, you see it through Nicholas Hoult, but with him and Awkwafina during the scenes that they're in, it's just very kind of like, oh yeah, like here we are, we're doing the scene together. It's more like they're doing like a improv skit than it is a actual rehearsed scripted line. And who knows, maybe this movie was improv a lot. I don't know, that's for sure, but it felt more like it was just more like an improv, like kind of like acting class, than it was a, again, well rehearsed scripted dialogue scene. So that's what I think stuck out the most to me. That's one of its flaws. But the biggest flaw, however, is that this movie to me kind of had a genre identity crisis where it didn't know what it wanted to be. It didn't want to be a horror movie, a comedy, an action movie, because there are a lot of things that are just crammed inside this movie. And then again, it's a very short movie. It's only an hour and 30, and with the credits, so it's a very quick, hour 30, and it goes by fast. But they do cram a lot of action, these big action set pieces with horror, a lot of comedy, and I remember, but it's fortunate because I went to the theater seeing it, and there was no one. There was like maybe 3 other people in there with me, and I'm like, oh, is that a good sign? And it's getting pretty favorable reviews for the most part, but going in, I was like, oh, this isn't a good sign. And again, it's one of those movies that the jokes weren't landing as much. And similar thing when I saw Cocaine Bear a few months ago. It was that theater had more people in it. And same thing, the jokes weren't landing, and I think the script made a bit of a punch-up or a rewrite, because a lot of the humor just didn't really work for myself, but also in the 3 other people that were in my theater. So it was like, uh-oh. And I think the horror stuff of it was fascinating. In the beginning, especially, a lot of horror in the beginning of the movie, but the horror kind of quickly goes away more and more throughout the movie, and it becomes this huge kind of like a huge action gore fest. And I compared to I compare this movie to almost to like Fright Night, both the remake and the original, plus a splash of the movie Hot Fuzz by Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright, was on Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim, The World's End, Baby Driver. Wes Soho is a phenomenal director, one of my personal favorites. And in Hot Fuzz is a very, very gory movie, but that's a style with action and gore and violence. And to me, this movie tries to become an Edgar Wright movie in multiple different ways throughout during the huge action, the fight scenes, the action set pieces, and it just became that. It became just over the top gore, but it was very like not even like real gore. It was you can tell it's so fake. It's very, very comical. It's very cartoonish. Like all the blood looks really fake and very like very like just kind of very like low budget in a way. So it became just all about the gore and these huge like kind of parkour fight sequences with it. They're very well choreographed. Don't get me wrong, but they just didn't feel like this was the movie that they were going to pitch in the beginning of the movie as well as the trailers. It just became this. It went from a comedy to a horror, back to a comedy, back to this huge action. Full of gore, blood. Fight scenes. Again, it was very well choreographed, but it just didn't feel like it was all the same movie. At sometimes it felt like, okay, we're gonna have this part be a comedy, this part be a horror movie, this part be an action gore fest, and if they blended it together more efficiently, like a Hot Fuzz or a Baby Driver or I'm trying to think of examples. Oh, like, I kind of reminded me of Kick-Ass. The first Kick-Ass. The first Kick-Ass was like a superhero movie, but it was also very gritty. It was like a crime drama at times, but it had a lot of absurd violence, a lot of gore to it. And watching Renfield, I had a flashback of watching Kick-Ass for the first time because it's very cartoonish violence. It's very cartoonish, gore and blood. So it felt like that a lot because I'm like, oh wait, this is just kind of just like cartoony, like haha, like gore fest. So I think the movie needed another rewrite as well as just more time spent with it because it did suffer from having a identity crisis of what genre wanted to be, and if they focused on either one or two, or one in general, it would have helped the movie out a lot. I think you see a lot of movies too that tries to balance a lot of characters, but also try to balance a lot of genres, and it hurts them in the long run because if the movie just focused on one or two genres, or like a hybrid genre, like a horror comedy like Megan or Freaky, other examples. But if you can focus on two in general, that's kind of the key of making a really good hybrid genre of a movie because it works. This needed to know, like, hey, what do you want to be? Do you want it to be a horror movie? Do you want to be a comedy? Do you want to be an action movie? Because that's where it hurts the most in this movie. Because I'm like, like if they focus on one thing, or maybe spent more time with longer. Again, I do like short movies, but maybe a bit longer, maybe an hour 45, or at least 2 hours. They could have explored more with it and could have explored more of the horror aspects. Because again, I wanted to know more about the horror within. Again, because I want to see Nicolas Cage kind of like unfiltered as Dracula. I want to see more of like the lore of his Dracula. What do he bring differently to this table? Because I think it's brought up at the beginning of the movie and it's done very well, but it just kind of goes right back to like the comedy right away. So that's where it suffers from a lot, unfortunately. And watching it too is kind of like watching like 21 Jump Street, or the style of like Chris Lord and Phil Miller, who did the first Lego movie, 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street. A show called The After Party. They also wrote and produced the Spider-Verse movies. So they have a certain style too, which is kind of similar to what this movie was, but it wasn't as high quality or as kind of like clever as what Chris Miller and Phil Lord do with their movies, or Edgar Wright. So it hurts a lot, unfortunately, but again, it's still enjoyable. If you are a Nicolas Cage, you're a vampire horror comedy fan, I would say go see it as a matinee, like an early matinee. Don't pay full price for it, or if you or watched it on TV, it's definitely worth the rental, or worth watching the stream on Peacock. But I will say, if you are curious about this at all, definitely pay the matinee, go to an early matinee, see this, because I still had fun despite all its flaws and its like quirks and the weirdness. But I thought the acting was very, very well, and it's fun seeing these kind of movies on the big screen because it's why we go to the movies, even when they're bad or not as good like this movie was. It's just fun seeing like a kind of goofy, fun movie on the big screen. We're not watching like an Avengers or I don't know, like an Oscar baity kind of movie, which I know most of those now are on Netflix and HBO and Peacock and Hulu, but it's fun. It has its flaws, but it's fun. So I'm giving that as of now 6 out of 10. Yeah, it's worth seeing if you're a big Nicolas Cage, Nicholas Hoult, Dracula fan. But like I said, it's definitely worth the matinee. Next up, I've been watching the show. The show I actually watched this week was got put off for a little while because my girlfriend has watched it. A lot of people at work have watched it, and I said, "What is this show?" And it's A24 on Netflix called Beef. I'm a big Steven Yeun fan. I've been a fan of his for a while. Don't know much about Ali Wong. I've seen Always Be My Maybe. I thought she was really good in that movie. I think she was she's a great romantic lead. And I love her scene with Keanu Reeves in that movie. But I didn't know much about this movie, about the show, sorry. And I know it was on Netflix. Again, I'm a huge A24 fan. So I was intrigued by, again, big Steven Yeun fan. And from what people were pitching me to me, it was like, oh, it's a road rage comedy. I'm like, okay, it's funny, but how can you do 10 episodes of a road rage comedy, for that long? And I put off for a while. And then again, my girlfriend said, you gotta watch the show. It's so good. People at work, you gotta watch the show. It's so, so, so good. Other podcasts I listen to, whether it's Double Toasted or I think who was talking about it last week I was listening to. Anyway, they were highly praising it. I'm like, all right, well, it's 10 episodes. It's on Netflix. They're all out right now. It's a 35-minute episode. Each episode. I'm like, all right, I do like a shorter length TV series at times. So I put it on last week, and the first episode hooked me for sure. And for me, I'm a big on TV. I'm very picky with TV shows. You got to hook me in the first episode. If not, I won't come back. I'll forget about it for a while. So I know it's kind of unfair. I probably like the TV shows I missed out on, like Sopranos and other shows I haven't seen yet. But I will watch those eventually. But that's my kind of like motto when it comes to TV shows, which is you gotta hook me in the first episode. If you hook me in the first episode, I'm in. Let's keep it going. And the first episode hooked me. I'm like, oh, cool. I like this. Where's it going to go? And what I heard from people, it's like it gets crazier towards the end. I said, okay, well, I can look forward to seeing something crazier. But at the same time, I felt like what they did really well was with Beef is that each episode, like, it kind of elevated the story and kept you guessing, ooh, what's going to happen next? Don't get me wrong, there are episodes where it does feel like, ooh, like, it kind of feels, again, for a 35-minute episode, they do feel like they're dragging a bit, but I guess most TV shows with the first hill is, the first few episodes are kind of like the hill you get over to like, oh yeah, we're setting things up, so then the payoff is worth it, or it gets crazier after that, watch what happens. So I felt with the show a lot actually, but the performances by Ali Wong and Steven Yeun are just very, very just captivating, and like they're really like giving them their all, and I like that in this movie, in the show, except for again, I knew Steven Yeun. I'm a fan of his. Knew a little bit of Ali Wong, not so much. And so, Maria Bello, I know from like other shows and other movies. I didn't know who most of the cast was, which I like. I love seeing shows with new talent. I love seeing shows that like, I didn't know who that person was, or who's that person, and that works because like, I'm not seeing that person. I'm not seeing Timothy Chalamet. I'm not seeing Jason Sudeikis. I'm not seeing Jordan Peele or Keegan Michael Key. Like I'm seeing people that I've not seen before in shows, which is like cool. I'm seeing them now as new actors to my eyes. And I love that because it didn't take me out, and I like seeing kind of just like new actors and what they're bringing to the table and what their performances are like. And in this show especially, I think every performance was really earned, and they really brought their A game, because you can tell in a lot of TV shows nowadays that do actors want to be there? Are they really into this whatsoever? And I feel like every actor that I saw in the show like was really wanted to be there. They believed in this material. They were giving good dialogue, giving good scripts, giving good direction, and that all works together very well in this series. So with each episode, I saw more and more better acting from everyone, even from Ali and Steven Yeun. So it was like, wow, they're really kind of like just bringing their A game. And also, I feel like A24. I'm a huge A24 fan. And I didn't know too much about the TV shows prior to this. I mean, except for Euphoria. Again, I am a Euphoria fan, but Euphoria definitely is a tough watch, and it's very dark and it's very gritty. But this show kind of had like a Safdie brothers feel to it at times. We kind of like putting a knot in your stomach of like make you feel anxious. Like, oh no, just go home. Like, don't do that. Forget about it. Move on. Like, don't do this. And the Safdie brothers have done Uncut Gems, Good Time. If you know their movies, they make anxiety-induced movies of like, oh man, don't do this, don't do that, go home, don't forget about this, make better decisions, and those characters don't. And with this show, similar feeling of, oh man, like they keep doing the wrong things no matter what, like keeping the wrong decisions. It's like, oh man, it's gonna bite you in the ass down the road, and it does. And for sure suffer from secondhand embarrassment. So like I was either closing my eyes or like, like what's gonna happen here, and oh no, don't do that. Like, oh, I'm feeling cringe. And to the show's credit, it did a really good job of kind of like exploring that. And like I said, it's for a 10 episode series. They do a good job of kind of keeping things moving forward. However, I do feel like mid season there was for sure points of slow points and points of that kind of drag. I'm like, all right, this could have been cut down a little bit, or you could have made the episodes maybe 8 or 9 episodes total, not 10 episodes, because that would have made things a little bit more tighter. The thing that the show could have helped a little bit with was a bit of made tighter run times, because again, like I said, even with a 35-minute, 30-minute episode run times, they do feel dragged on a bit. But overall, it didn't take away from the story or from the show quality itself. It just, from a audience perspective, from a critic's perspective, to me, it was just like, ooh, there's things I would have like changed a bit, but still very entertaining. And I was late to the show after a week and not kind of putting it off. I'm like, I'm starting now, and I'm glad I did, because I was very, very impressed with it. And also a great soundtrack. You know, I'm a big soundtrack nerd for movies and shows, and this show has some really good record needle drops, either throughout the show, during the episodes, or at the end of the episode during the end credits. And I love that. I love, again, big stuff like Space Jam and like Mike, and I think what else, Fast and Furious, Lady Bird. I'm a big Perks of Being a Wallflower. I'm a big Cruella. I'm a big soundtrack admirer in shows and TV, and so shows and movies. So it was, they brought a really good killer soundtrack to the show, which again I gave them points for as well. In a way, I thought myself after watching the entire series, the show reminded me of a movie that came out during like the heart of the pandemic during 2020, I think August of 2020. It's called Unhinged with Russell Crowe, and I'm a big Russell Crowe fan. But that movie was awful, like awful, and it had a great premise of like, what if you piss off the wrong guy who has road rage, and it kind of becomes your worst nightmare. Great premise, you have a great actor, but that movie was garbage. That movie was just terrible, because no one was likable. No one you just didn't care. The action was very, very just generic, very low budget. But to me, this show explored the dangers of road rage, and someone who I definitely had road rage before in the past. After seeing this show, you know what? I don't care if someone cuts me off or flips me off or whatever. I will going to keep cool, because after seeing this show, you never know what might happen on the highway, on the streets, or your neighborhood. So I was like, you know what? This show taught me a lesson of like, no matter how bad it was, if someone took your parking space, keep cool, because you never know what this person is capable of, or what they might do, or they might take a picture of your license plate, whatever. So this show for sure taught me a valuable lesson in calming road rage, because at the end of the day, it's not worth it whatsoever. But like I said, the show was very, very well done. It's again, the show really relies on these two main actors, Ali Wong and Steven Yeun, and like I said, they do bring their A game to this, and their dynamic is very, very interesting, because they're enemies, but they have a lot of common at the same time. They're like things in common. Also, they're like also kind of just like, they're frustrated in their own lives, and they kind of brought it to each other. And I thought it's very interesting to see like a character study of two people who suffer from road rage, as well as suffer from just like being lost in their own lives and not being in control of their own lives. I love exploring that in TV shows and movies, because it's a very human thing that I think we can all like talk about. Is even though I might be different in economics and race and sex and backgrounds, but we do, maybe some of us can like definitely like have a small mutual thing, whether it's road rage or whether it's sharing the same hobby or whatever. I thought it was very fascinating of like how they explored the dynamic between these two characters, whether it's how different they are, but also how similar they are at the same time. So I was very impressed with that. The ending, I do feel like the ending had some questionable moments. I think it could have ended on episode 9. There's 10 episodes altogether. This is on Netflix. Episode 9 could have been the ending, because it could have either ended on a cliffhanger or ended right there with things that happened. Again, there's no spoilers. Uh, and I do think the show could have been a bit better if it ended on that. Episode 10 kind of like things happen, and again, I understand why you had to have it because you explain a few things, and it's an ending that was kind of like, oh, it was okay ending. I just didn't. It wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't like, oh my god, this is a fantastic ending. But it it resolves certain things. But episode 9 to me was like almost a perfect way of ending it. Whether you want to end it on a cliffhanger or end it on like on things, things happen, and this is it's how it ends. So again, everyone wants a good happy ending or some kind of a closure ending. So I do think that episode 9 would have been a better ending to the show whatsoever. But again, overall, I'm giving Beef 8 out of 10. It'll be interesting to see what they do next if they're going to do another season with these two characters or maybe season like an anthology series of like season 2. Same thing, road rage incidents. Here's what happens. Boom, 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 boom. There's like what unfolds after a really bad road rage incident, or like some kind of similar incident, whether it's like taking someone's parking spot, or coming in line at Costco, whatever, something like that, something kind of silly or like similar to that, because I think you can explore another character study of two different people, different backgrounds, different incomes, different economics, but at the core of it, they are similar in their own weird way. So again, who knows? Again, kudos to A24 for having another great project on their hands. I think what they're bringing for original content, whether it's on the big screen or on TV, is unmatched. A24 gives new filmmakers, independent filmmakers, kind of like free leeway to do whatever they want, and it's seen in their movies. Whether it's everything, everywhere, all at once won best picture this year, the Oscars. So, and they gave the Daniels, hey man, hey guys, do your thing, just do whatever you want to make, or the Safdie brothers, look at Uncut Gems and Good Time, or look at Greta Gerwig, Lady Bird. That was her first directorial debut, and look at her now; she's making the Barbie movie. So they are giving a lot of uh, leeway, also a lot of creative like freedom to the filmmakers, which I think is very admiring, also very kind of refreshing because they are bringing original stuff to the table, to the screen, both little and big screen. Because in a time like this, we are definitely like bombarded with the next superhero movie, the next comic book movie, the next franchise, and after a while, it was all fun and dandy. I'm a huge fan of those movies altogether, but when you see a mid '90s, when you see Uncut Gems, when you see a Lady Bird, you remember like, wow, like how amazing an independent film like that, or how amazing, like how much that movie can capture you. And most of those projects are very very low budget, made no and like little to no marketing, but it's refreshing to see what the ability they can bring to the box office and to TV, and they bring in so many audiences. And I definitely belong to the generation of A24 movies because I remember the first one coming out. I was in high school and that was Spring Breakers. But yeah, you heard me and Joel talk about it last, I think, 2 weeks ago on the podcast. It's an awful movie. And I'm like, oh, A24, this is what they make, and I like being proven wrong. And I remember seeing more of them after that. I was like, wait, they have more stock than just a really bad Spring Breakers, James Franco movie, Selena Gomez movie. So I'm trying to think what else did I like from them a lot? I'm like, oh my gosh, again, I'm a big mid '90s fan. Jonah Hill's one of my favorite filmmakers, favorite actors. So it was fun. I love seeing a personal story told by him in his own voice. And again, Moonlight won Best Picture as well. So they've had wins before in the Oscars, before Everything Everywhere All at Once, and they just bring to such of like just unique and creativity to their projects. And I just again I love seeing what they bring because you never know what it might be. I'm seeing Beau is Afraid this week at an early screening with Joaquin Phoenix by Ari Aster, which I think I'm not a huge Ari Aster fan. I tried watching Hereditary, it wasn't for me. I see Midsummer, and it was very disturbing, and as that movie is, but I am looking forward to seeing. 'Cause I'm a huge Joaquin Phoenix fan, and again, I love seeing original and weird and twisty stuff in movies and TV because after a while you see the same old formulaic stuff, and it's refreshing as a aspiring filmmaker like myself, as well as critic like myself, as well as someone who just loves movies and TV. It's fun seeing original stuff on the big screen and on TV. So I definitely recommend Beef. It's on Netflix. If you haven't seen Beef yet, highly recommend. It's definitely one of the best shows this year, and maybe the best show of the year so far. But we'll see how the rest of the year plays out. But yeah, guys, that was my two quick reviews this week. Like I said, we're going to be bringing you a normal episode as usual on this Friday. I think episode number 14 or 15, I want to say. But we do appreciate all your support. You know, we've had so much fun doing the show every week. Grateful to Joel and Nick for hopping on every week. When Moses when he can. We're growing the show. We're doing pretty good numbers. We're trying to expand our audience. We're trying to do more networking events in AZ and the Phoenix area, trying to get involved more with the Phoenix film area and the Phoenix film community because it's a great community to be part of because we all love movies. We're all big movie nerds and movie buffs, and it's just fun exploring more, talking about stuff every week and what's coming out and stuff like that. And we have a big summer of movies coming out, whether it's Indiana Jones, Guardians, Fast 10. So much going on this summer. So it'll be a fun summer to kind of recap and review what we're going to see, what we're going to watch, and what we're planning on seeing. But hope you enjoyed this bonus episode I brought you all this week. And as always, if you can hit that follow, subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, or your podcast platform of choice, it means the world to us, guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Cheers, everybody.